Alright. The bounty of the Appleseed. Finally, the girl thought to herself. She could still hardly believe she would dare investigate such a dangerous area based on pure hearsay, but still, she was drawn to the forest. At a local tavern nearly a week ago, she first learned of the treasure. An elven bard and her had been drinking together, sharing laughs and stories. There's a wandering wood, a forest, known only as the Berkshire. She rolled her eyes. A wandering wood? Foolish to think such a thing existed. A fey-touched forest, the bard continued. The trees speak to you, coercing you to your doom. The branches laugh at you when you take a false turn. The wind whispers sweet nothings into your ear. It's truly a dangerous place. Then it's not worth the hassle, is it? She mused. Inside, however, he paused, houses an axe, a beautiful thing. Wrapped by vines and encrusted with emeralds galore. Even to glimpse it is a wonder. Never mind to hold such a thing. To get that weapon would be to get a bounty from nature itself. She did admit the thought of the profit she could get from such a weapon intrigued her. And who knew if such a thing could also be magical in nature? But still, going on a pursuit of treasure just based on a bard's silly tales was unlike her. And yet, off she went not a day later. Oddly enough, finding the wandering wood was the easy part. Perhaps the Fae knew she was searching for them. It was only about a week's journey that took her to the forest edge. As she approached, the fog of night began to get thicker and thicker. A strange pinkish mist coated her vision, rendering her completely blind as she entered into the thick of the forest. A group of voices, each voice giddy and whimsical, all spoke to her at the same time. A goblin approaches the Berkshire. What will she do? Is she here to meet our queen? These voices were persuasive, each one trying to convince her to follow the direction in order to reach the center tree where the treasure was housed. They spoke of how happy they would be if she listened, how happy their queen would be if she became one with the trees and with the Fae. But she had a mission, a goal in mind. The great axe at the end of the Berkshire's labyrinth was her prize. She couldn't lose sight of it, no matter what the voices in the trees said to her. She's strong of will, this one, the voices sang. She's clever and crafty, this one, the voices sang. Perhaps she will be the one to pull the axe. After what felt like hours, she emerged through the fog. Sight restored, she gazed upon a massive tree, the healthiest and most vibrant of oak she had ever witnessed. The tree was surrounded by vines and opened itself to her upon her approach. A secret door? She questioned. Was this where her bounty was waiting? What of this queen the Fae spoke of? She approached inside with caution, brandishing her dagger as warning to anything that dare come close. She expected things to be dark, cavernous, but found herself surprised when she entered to the feeling of fresh flowers beneath her feet and hues of pinks and purples. She found herself inside what looked like a cottage, a home with high wooden ceiling, blazoned with flowers and vines. A mahogany table set a feast fit for thousands. Next to that, house chairs made from vines and moss, enough for a party of beings, but some massive, while others terribly small. Is this where that queen lived? None of that mattered, however, when she saw a bed. Raised from the ground by wild mushrooms, the bed was long and tall, the frame regal and made of the finest wood craftsmanship the goblin had ever seen. Instead of sheets and blankets were, of course, flowers and vines, and to it strapped was the most beautiful emerald-encrusted hatchet. "The axe!" the goblin excitedly bound. She rushed to it. Vines encased every inch of its emerald and oaken frame, each vine attached to the bed itself and thornier than the last. She did have some strength to her, but she was worried about being able to pull the thing. Nevertheless, she wrapped her hands around the hilt. Immediately upon making contact, vines wrapped around her hand, pricking her skin and tightening her grip around the axe. She could feel the magic of the axe pulsating with her touch. With all her strength, she pulled and pulled, the vines tightening and mangling around her hand. She ripped the axe from its thorny prison as her hand was torn by the vines. Blood seeped from where she grabbed the axe, but she cared little. She had nature's bounty in her hands. All at once, she could feel the air around her shift as a harsh wind blew. She could hear the songs of birds and smell the sweet scent of fresh grass and lavender on her nose. And before her eyes, and the same pink mist that blinded her within the Berkshire, housed a beautiful fairy maiden. Taller than most fairies the goblin had heard tale of, this maiden stood tall, long, pale pink hair dropping down to her knees, eyes green and devoid of pupil, wings lithe and strong of flight, and on her head, long white horns, strangely fiendish in nature. The fairy took a moment to examine herself, studying her own image bit by bit, admiring each minute detail of her skin. "I suppose it is you I have to thank for freeing me," the fae spoke, her voice regal and commanding in tone. I suppose you do," the goblin responded, her body shaking at the sight of such a being. Was she a god of some kind? "Ha!" the fae chuckled. "How strange that a simple goblin girl would be the one to finally free me from my entrapment." Entrapment? Was this fae a prisoner? "And how rude a goblin she is!" The fae waved a finger, and the goblin felt her body unwillingly pulled towards her. "To try and take my axe?" Her axe? Did the treasure of the tree belong to her? The goblin girl began to fear. Her body was paralyzed in place, stuck restrained by seemingly nothing while the fae spoke to her. "But I suppose it's more of a curse after all," the fae mused, voice strangely melodic and song-like. "You did just free an archfey, after all." An archfey? The goblin shook. She had heard stories of archfey, powerful beings with the strong desire to trick mortals such as herself. "Confused mortal," the archfey mused once again. "Do you not understand what you've done yet?" The goblin's head began to spin. The archfey were all imprisoned thousands of years ago, were they not? They were tricky beings, constantly bringing ruin and chaos to the world, until the heroes of old trapped them in various prisons. And she had just freed one. "Perhaps I should introduce myself," the archfey smiled. "You can call me Titania, the Fey Queen." Titania! The goblin felt her heart sink. Titania was the mightiest of all Fey, a force to be reckoned with both in battle and in wit. She was the craftiest of all, the most persuasive and hardest to capture. "Oh, how I've longed to return to the material once again," she laughed. Thousands, if not millions, of tiny voices laughing alongside her. The goblin's eyes glanced down at the axe. The emeralds aglow with nature's powerful breath. If only she could just move her body. "And you," the fairy queen laughed again, pulling the goblin into the air and right up to meet her eyes. "You are my prisoner now." The goblin felt a great pain tear through her body. Her hair began to sprout thorns. Curved and steel-plated, the axe within her hand pierced her skin with thorns yet again. She cried in agony as she was dropped to the ground, alone. Her body was her own again, and she sat, alone in the grass of a field unfamiliar to her. Where was she? Was she even in the material plane? And where was the Queen Titania? Even alone, however, she felt the Archfey's presence and felt the surge of magic rush through her. She had been changed, given power in exchange for chaos? Destruction? She did not know what the Fairy Queen had planned for her realm. An unwilling warlock of the Archfey. She set out on a journey. How to imprison Titania, she wasn't certain. But where one Archfey lay, she knew there were others. Others that may, however unwilling, be able to help her save the material realm and break the unwitting pact she found herself a part of.